This is the show that answers the question, what's up? What's up with the new R Meta series from KEF? Now I have in-house right here the R7 Meta, which is a three-way floor standing speaker. But there are also two other floor standers, plus a stand mount and two center channel speakers, and also a surround speaker. But for me, right now, it's just the R7 Meta. And it's delectable. It truly is. Now, the backstory to today's show, it goes all the way back to last summer when I reviewed the KEF Reference 3 Meta. And I was totally knocked out by the sound of that speaker. And I kept thinking about it. So by December, I was still thinking about it, and I made it one of my speakers of the year. Really exceptional product. But this new one, the R7 Meta, is 1/3 the price. So the question is, how do they fare? And that's what I'm going to answer over the course of this review. So as I said, the R7 Meta is a three-way. It has, of course, a Uni-Q driver, which is a 5-inch mid-range with a 1-inch dome tweeter. They're both aluminum drivers. And then there are two 6.5-inch aluminum paper hybrid woofers. Now, the thing about Uni-Q drivers, I think this is kind of confusing. They keep calling it the Uni-Q 12th generation, and that implies that there's a Uni-Q driver that's the 12th generation model, and that's it. But it's not quite that simple. For example, the first in the Meta series of speakers was the LS50 Meta. And that Uni-Q driver is a full range driver because that's the only driver that's in that speaker, right? So that driver goes all the way down into the bass, all the way up into the treble. But here, in the R7 Meta, it's used as a mid-range tweeter, and it only extends down to 400 hertz, and then that's where the two 6.5-inch drivers kick in. Here's a cutaway of the R7's Uni-Q driver. And you'll see, there's details there, it has a decoupled chassis, a new mid-range motor system, and the back wave travels through a new, more streamlined waveguide behind the tweeter. And then that exits into the Meta disc that's at the back of the driver. In other words, all of that is about minimizing the reflections coming back through the tweeter. So anyway, it results in what they claim, and I believe, is a cleaner sounding tweeter. Oh, one other thing, the R7's Uni-Q driver is surrounded by what they call a shadow flare waveguide. Again, you don't see anything like that on the LS50 Meta. Again, because the LS50's Uni-Q is a full range driver. It's a completely different beast, so don't get them mixed up. It's easy to, but don't. Round back, there are two large bass ports, and below that, by-wire speaker connections. The paint finishes, oh yes. So my sample was finished in gloss white. Absolutely impeccable paint finish. But of course, you can also get it in gloss black, walnut, and a special order titanium finish. You know, living with the R7 Meta, I squeezed in some time comparing it with the LS50 Meta, and also the Zoo DW6, the Dirty Weekend 6, and my main reference speaker right now, the Pure Audio Project Duet 15. Oh, I'm going to put up the complete specifications right now, and note that yes, the impedance is rated at 4 ohms, dropping down to 3.2 ohms, which is really low. So yeah, you need an amplifier that's happy driving low impedance speakers. No cheap receivers are welcome here. So the motivation for doing this review was based on my really positive experience with the Reference 3 Meta. So the question was, how will this one, for 1/3 the price, yeah, $5,000 a pair for the R7 Meta versus $15,000 a pair for the Reference 3 Meta. So how would the 7 fare in this like mental comparison, because it's been many months since I've heard the Reference 3. I think it did pretty well. Bass, by the way, goes down to, the R7 Meta's bass goes down to a solid 40 hertz in my room. It sounds like a big speaker. And don't worry, there will be an Audiophiliac viewer system of the day later on in today's show. As for setup, pretty straight ahead. And by the way, these speakers sound fine firing straight ahead. No toe in is necessary to get a solid center image. I had them about 3 feet from the wall behind them and about 8.5 feet apart, and I was seated about 9 feet away. I used just 2 amplifiers over the course of this review, the NAD M23 and also the Linear Tube Audio Microzodal 40 Reference Plus, which is a tube amplifier. Both sounded great. They sounded really different. I split it pretty much even between the 2 amplifiers. My listening time was split between those 2 amplifiers. So the first piece of music I played was this Fine Young Cannibals remix album from 1990. And talk about rhythm and pace. That's the thing that grabbed me first about the sound of this speaker. I played it pretty loud for a lot of my listening time over this review, 90 dB, mid-90s, because I was just really, really enjoying playing it loud. But yes, it also sounded really good, played very, very quietly at late night listening levels. So it can do it all. But it was the bass, the impact of the bass, the leading edge of the bass was really strong, really grippy, grunty. I came up with a new word, that the bass textures were very finely delineated with the R7 Metas. Very nicely done. So this review follows on the heels of the Bowers & Wilkins 705 S3 stand mount review. And that speaker, as I recall, I didn't have them here at the same time, that speaker was more transparent, a little nicer top end, more finesse going on up there. But this one is a big speaker, well, much bigger than the 705 S3, and it had that big speaker power delivery. You know, when you get used to hearing big speakers, when you go to a little one, they sound little. And when you go to a R7 Meta, it just has this ease about playing loud, with grace, with low distortion. It's just a blast to play it loud because it's easy. It's easy on the ears, no listening fatigue whatsoever. Now, of course, you have to be using really good electronics and good sources to do that. If you're using, it's not going to sound as good as it can because it's very revealing of whatever is upstream from the R7 Metas. As I mentioned earlier, I was going to do this comparison between the KEF LS50 Meta and the R7 Meta, but I didn't want to just go back and forth between the 2 speakers. I just wanted to sink in, get reacquainted with the LS50 Meta, and just, get used to its sound again, and then go back to the R7. And one of the albums I kept coming back to that day was this one by Jimmy Rushing, who's a blues singer, with the Dave Brubeck Quartet. It's great. On paper, it might not look good, jazz and blues, but of course it does. Of course it makes sense. And they were great together. So anyway, I'm listening on the LS50 thinking, this is doing it. Jimmy sounds like he's right there. It was recorded at Columbia 30th Street, 1960. So it's presumably live in the studio without any overdubs or tweaks or fixes. And it has that kind of presence. And he's such a great singer. He's such a soulful singer. It just feels like it comes from his heart. And I was getting all of that with the LS50 Meta. But then it came time to switch over to the R7 Meta. And not only did, it play louder with greater ease, it had more bass. It sounded like a bigger speaker. But the thing that really surprised me was how the sound stage just really opened up. It had more 3D solidity. It just seemed to make more sense. It was more like, being in the studio, but it's a cliche. But that's really what it felt like, is it just opened up and sounded, relaxed, that I could play it louder. There was no contest. But then again, that was a foregone conclusion, but I had to do it. But I got to say, the LS50 on its own is awfully good, and it's less than 1/3 the price of the R7 Meta. So, at this point, I decided to put aside the LS50, move into place the Zoo Dirty Weekend 6, continuing with Jimmy Rushing and the Dave Brubeck Quartet. And the thing that got me was, right away, that the Zoo speaker's mid-range was thinner, less full, than either KEF speaker. This wasn't what I was expecting, but that's the way it went down. But it had this, it sort of cut through more, because the vocals just had more right there presence than either KEF speaker. And when I played them loud, it just lit up. Now, it doesn't sound as accurate or neutral as either KEF, but it's fun. The Zoo speaker just really communicates rhythm and pace and liveness and energy. It does that so well. So it's got its place. It's a different color. It's a different taste than the KEF speakers. So that's how that went down. To finish up, my last speaker comparison was the Pure Audio Project Duet 15. Now this is an open baffle speaker. It's not a box speaker. It's a panel speaker with exposed drivers, a full range driver, and then also a 15-inch woofer. It's actually a fairer contest than the others because it's actually a little bit more expensive than the R7. It's $6,500 a pair. Now it has a 15-inch woofer, so yeah, the bass is bigger and fuller and just more voluptuous than I was getting from the KEF R7 Meta. But the R7's bass was far more articulate and clear, but the Duet 15 just had more soul to it, more weight. Yeah, big speakers have that big sound that I really, really like. The soundstage on the Pure Audio Project was big, really open, really spacious, but less finely focused and clear. The top end of the R7 Meta is way pure and extended and delicate and just gorgeous. And the top end on the Pure Audio Project is softer, less detailed, less clear. They're going in different directions. The Pure Audio Project, you can just play it louder and louder and louder, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And even though I do like the way the R7 handles volume, it's not quite as effortless as the Pure Audio Project. So they're doing different things. Okay, so let's get on with this and do. So Steve, what do you really think? What do you really think of the KEF R7 Meta? I think it's really good. I mean, it does have a lot of what I loved about the KEF Reference 3 Meta. But the Reference 3 is a big speaker. It's almost too big for this room. It was like borderline acceptable. So the R7 Meta is more likely to fit in a normal, 11 by 18 or 20 room. It's more room friendly than the Reference 3. It's also 1/3 the price, $5,000 a pair versus $15,000 a pair for the Reference 3 Meta. That counts for something, I think. But anyway, the fit and finish of the R7 is absolutely stunning. It feels like a high-end speaker. So, you know what it is? It's a pretty neutral sounding speaker overall. So if you want neutral with a big speaker presence and power for $5,000 a pair, this is going to be hard to beat. And speaking of hard to beat, it is now time for the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. This fine system comes to us from Jason. He lives in South Florida. His speakers are Philharmonic Audio BMR towers in satin zebrawood. There's a REL T5X subwoofer in there. Power amp NAD M23, preamp Doge 8 Clarity. It's the 2022 RCA model. Turntable Thorin's TD125 Mark II by Vinyl Nirvana. Phono preamp Sutherland TZ Vibe, which is a moving coil transimpedance design. Schiit Bifrost 264 DAC with a Cyrus CDT transport. Power conditioner is PowerCore Technologies Equicore 1800 and a Halton DC Blocker 1. Thanks, Jason. Okay, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the Audiophiliac, and I am, right here, the genuine article. And if you're enjoying these reviews and the interviews and the thought pieces and the Audiophiliac viewer systems of the day, please consider joining my Patreon. The address is on the screen right now. You could join for a couple of bucks a month and up. So check out the site, the Patreon site, and you'll see what's available. And with that, I can say, yeah, my work here is at last complete. Thank you so much for watching. And I really, really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.